Welcome back to the Fantasy Football Clown Show. I'm your host, Ed Smith, and today we're going to dive into a 12 team in the Family Business series. And this is the first team that we're going to preview that kind of was part of what I'll call the COVID situation, where I was drafting the summer of 2020. Just after the pandemic started, and this is where the habit began, if you will. Some of the unique things in this scoring are that quarterbacks throwing touchdowns are 6 points. There's a tight end premium of an additional half point, so up 50% from the 1 point PPR. And then just some small subtleties. Any reception over 40 yards, rushing attempt rushes over 40 yards or throws over 40 yards are an additional half point, and then a 40-yard plus touchdown is also an additional half a point, so gives you an extra point for any of those things happening in addition to whatever the normal scoring would be. Some of the differences once we start to look at this league to make it really unique and where things really take hold in different ways are going to be in the amount of starters and where they're positioned. So we have one quarterback, two super flex, two tight end, two running back, three receiver, and then three flex for 13 starters. Just some percentages that's important for us to really take a look at is of your starting lineup, the quarterback, the wide receiver, and the flex spot are all 23% of the scoring that you have on a weekly basis, with the tight end being 15% and the running back being 15%. Now, why that becomes important is that running backs are a lot easier to get to than tight ends. If we think about, there are some timeshares where tight ends are very much there's a big difference, like, if you will, between the top tight ends and then even the bottom tight ends and the backup tight ends, compared to maybe a timeshare in the running back room that we see maybe like in Green Bay, where there's two running backs that both get carries, or even in Detroit where two running backs get carries, or in Dallas where two running backs get carries, and in Arizona. I mean, there's just so many timeshares where if you had the secondary back in Cleveland's a big example of it as well. So if you had those secondary tight end pieces at 1.5 times on the reception total, it really will stymie your ability to maneuver. And so the more you might monopolize in the tight end area, the more you'll be able to create the haves and the have-nots inside of the league. So an important distinction that we have at that point is the tight end premium here is great. And then as well as the quarterback premium, if we think about it, if we start three, that's 36. We have 32 starters, and there's nobody else getting reps. So you can start other positions there, but with 6 points for a quarterback throwing touchdown, they're going to score in the mid-20s pretty conceivably. And if we start looking at the wide receiver 7, because we have 3 flexes, 3 receivers, and the worst quarterback's better. If we look at the running back 6, because we have 2 starters and 3 flexes, on our team to put in the super flex, it's so low on the totem pole that getting those in line makes sense. Now, what I did here, which I try to do in a lot of the kind of leagues, is I pick something that I think where value has fallen. So when I draft a startup, I don't have any preconceived notions. I realize that quarterbacks in a league like this have a lot of value, and tight ends have a lot of value. However, I'm not going to reach. And so I think that's where fantasy players get into a lot of trouble. They begin to reach for things. And so I don't reach here. I just draft what the league gives me. I just go down the board and I take what I take, or what's given. However, I do elevate the tight end room and the quarterback room in this style format. The other thing to keep in mind is I always feel like in our future rookie draft, I'll be able to get startable receivers out of the second round and startable running backs out of the first round. And I feel like the team needs to be in position to win before we can draft those running backs. So I try to draft running backs last. And so, like, as I'm filling the team, I don't need the team to be the 8th place team. I need it to either be the 12th or the 2nd and get the bye. So really being in the middle of that doesn't make a lot of difference. Now, having said that, getting in the top 6 and getting your way through the playoffs and getting hot at the right time makes a difference. I won some leagues out of the sixth spot this year, so I'm not going to discount winning from the sixth spot, but it doesn't make a lot of sense to be in the eighth spot is where I really go with that. So you either want to be 12 or 6. And if you can get to 2 and get a bye, that makes more sense. And so, a league like this, I look at, how do I use my bench positions as well? So with 15 bench spots, 5 IR, 5 taxi. I'm going to do my best to always have the taxi and the bench filled, so 20 players there, plus the 13 starters for 33. And then I'm going to try to get as many IR spots filled as I can. So I'd really like to hold 38 players for the majority of the season because I feel like, again, if there's 38 players on my team, then we're getting deep into other teams that they don't have those options to start against us. And so as I look at a league, not only do I need to be in the top 6, if I can find a way to make 6 teams worse than me and be in the bottom 6, then I'm not part of that bottom 6. It matters less about the quality of my team, but really what I've done to other teams as far as the have-nots is another way that I do play. I look at what do they have, and I try to squeeze all the value out of them that I can so that they're forced to take as many L's as they can. And so then when I play head-to-head, I do get those wins, but realistically, I'm trying to create teams that just don't have a chance to win on a given week because they don't have maybe a tight end or they maybe don't have a quarterback to start in the super flex and they're starting somebody maybe like Adam Shaheen, a backup tight end for Miami, or somebody of that nature, or even Isaiah McKenzie. The majority of the weeks wouldn't have been a good start, and so that happens more times than not. Now, if they're fortunate enough to be able to start Byron Pringle, and he happens to get the touchdown week, there's not much I can do about that. But that's the gist of what I try to do there. And so as I look at this team, I'm going to break down the quarterback room first and realize that the quarterback room as it's currently configured is poor. But my goal is to make sure that even though it's poor today, is let's try to get a little bit better. But maybe the other quarterback rooms are even more poor than mine. So today, as we sit here, I do believe I do have the 3 starters, but that could change. So I have Mills and Wentz, who I think will both potentially start next year with Darnold. And I'm not sure what happens to Darnold. I know that Carolina is going to be looking for a quarterback, somewhat either whether it be the draft or through free agency or a trade. And so, my ultimate hope is that Darnold goes somewhere and is a starter for somebody like Denver or a place like that where maybe he just gets to have a cup of coffee. I thought about a Deshaun Watson trade, and then he's fighting with Mills. I'm not sure if that makes any sense that I have 2 quarterbacks at one spot, but that's kind of those 3 quarterbacks that are penciled in and definitely in pencil right now, with Mitch Trubisky, who again could get a start in maybe Tampa Bay or New Orleans or Pittsburgh. I've heard links to, so those are options for him, and so something to consider. And then I've got some real long shot stuff like Josh Rosen. He wasn't a first round pick, and so I have a roster spot. I'm going to use the roster spot, and so he's a guy that was last with Atlanta, and we'll see what happens. And he was really a Matt Ryan injury away from maybe getting a cup of coffee, and then you just never know. Again, he was a first round pick. So I guess I try to fill the roster with first round picks. Kyle Allen, he was a starter at one point for the now Commanders, and I have him on the roster. Let's see what happens. Maybe he's a bridge starter. I mean, he's got that capability. Wolford, I basically have Wolford at this point in the year because if something were to happen to Matt Stafford here in the Super Bowl, all of a sudden there would be some sort of panic would set in, and they possibly if it just worked the right way, it wasn't worth cutting, not knowing what happens with Matt Stafford in the Super Bowl. If Matt Stafford gets through unscathed, which we all assume, then everything's great. But just having a player that's going to play that crazier things have happened. I mean, if he gets the Nick Foles and gets to start and gets an MVP award, I mean, it's so unlikely. But, at this point, we just kind of keep him on the roster just because he's playing on Sunday as this is going on. So have Mond, and don't think that he's going to be a starter, but he's right behind Kirk Cousins. They did draft him in the second round and use some capital on him. Tyrod Taylor, I think he's just a backup from this point forward. However, having said that, I've watched him be a starter, a bridge starter, and so not knowing if Kenny Pickett or Matt Corral or any of the other quarterbacks will need a bridge on the way, I guess I could see him being that bridge, and so just kept him on the roster. And then finally, I have Ian Book, and Ian Book is really just taking up a spot on the taxi squad. And the second that we draft some people that make more sense than Ian Book, he'll probably get cut. So, I just saw what I needed to see from him last year in that start that just didn't look like he made too much sense. So the quarterback room is definitely something I'm going to look to address in the draft. And I think I have the draft capital to do that. But it's a point that it's just sheer numbers. And so using the spots for those sheer numbers. Now, moving on to the tight end position here again, it's two tight ends start, 1.5 point PPR. Um, could play, some in the flex. I'm not opposed to doing that. And as the team is currently constructed, I feel like there's three top six tight ends here. So if there's a 12 teams and I've got three of the top six, then I feel like I've kind of monopolized in a situation. So gonna start them because they're that high end, but wouldn't want to trade them. And this is the specific reason for not wanting to trade them is hoping that they all have different buys. If one were to get injured, we still have two that I'm starting every week. And if they're in my starting lineup, they're not in somebody else's starting lineup. And so all of a sudden, I probably, unless one other person did the same exact thing, I have the best tight end class in the league. So in a position that's a premium and tough to come by. So those three of the six that I have currently are Kyle Pitts, very young, Mark Andrews, that is the elder statesman of the group, but he was the tight end one last year, so not a bad spot to be. And then Hawkinson, who also is a target hog if we look at the Lions offense. So feel good about those three. Last year, a lot of times, just with the lack of depth on a team and a team that didn't win, I actually started Harrison Bryant, who should get more play this coming year. So pretty excited about him, especially if the other guys, Hooper and Njoku, move on. Harrison Bryant really has the ability, in my opinion, to be a superstar. And then we have Hurst. He's getting older, and moved over obviously to Atlanta, and he's plays with Pitts. Just have never found the right trade partner, and he does score though in this environment, so he's good to have. And when Hawkinson got hurt, I started him every week. I mean, he was good. And then I also have Long from Miami, and so just depending on what happens with Gesicki, typically tight ends do take a little bit more time to come into play, and so I'm just kind of hanging on to him on the taxi as well, just watching and waiting and seeing what it becomes. And so pretty happy with that tight end room. Also looking at the draft, don't feel like there's a whole lot in the tight end class, outside of McBride especially. And so, that could change though. So I try not to have any preconceived notions and try not to focus too much on rookies. And really we'll draft my draft board when we get there, but just kind of happy that I have Pitts and kind of got the tight end last year out of the way so that this is a good tight end group. And now I'm focusing on quarterbacks, even though the quarterback draft might be a little bit light. We'll just get some depth pieces, and that's really all it is. And then, unless the running backs or receivers kind of fall to us. And so as we move on to running backs, you guys will take a notice that I like running backs, and I feel like they're such a volatile piece that the more of them that you have, the more that you can just float guys in as they get injured. It's the most highly injured position on the field, and so the more you have, the more the depth you have, the more it doesn't make too much difference if they get hurt, they get nicked up, they miss a week or two. And so I use a lot of my roster spots on running backs, usually with purpose though. And so here I'm starting to, and unless I don't have enough tight ends, then we'll put those in the flex as well. And here we start with the top two of Mixon and CEH, and it brings me to CEH. I'm hesitant to sell CEH at this point because I have first round first pick kind of draft capital in him in most cases, or second pick, like that's where he was picked last year, and so have a lot into him, everywhere I have him, and so I feel like he's got to become a running back too, or not, but just not going to trade him at his age, and feel like maybe he's just going to come into being and be healthy. Following Mixon and CEH, in the flex, take care of injury type of thing. Chris Carson, Gus Edwards, two players that are coming off of injury, so not sure what they are, and just it's just a numbers game really. Hopefully, those two guys, somebody will become something to cover the bye weeks is really what I'm hoping for. And then I did pick up Foreman. He got a cup of coffee. Maybe he showed enough to get a job, sort of like Mike Davis did last year. I mean, that would just be perfect if he had I guess I expected either Jordan Howard or Dante Foreman. One of those guys is going to get the Mike Davis treatment, where they sign somebody and they're the featured guy, and we're like all excited, and it'll be time to trade him off for a second round pick or push something forward to get something. But picked him up off the waivers, so don't have anything into him. So anything I get is profit, and so looking for that. Samaje P. Ryan, that this feels like one of the only times I handcuffed, but it was probably because the handcuff was free. And so I have P. Ryan right behind Mixon. And so if anything were to happen, I have Mixon. And then also have Evans, just because he's a young guy, a rookie, and try to keep those guys on the taxi and hold him to see if they ever become anything, but not really any purpose, and probably would be somebody that I would leave. But with the Bengals being in the Super Bowl and the Super Bowl upcoming as I'm recording this video, I mean, I feel like having those running backs, not knowing what's going to happen, and then in the offseason, it's important to have. Salman Ahmad, we have him with Sermon. And a little bit about the 49ers running backs. I'm not real convinced that we know who the running back is. I mean, right now, as we sit here, we think Elijah Mitchell is the guy, and he might be the guy. But last year, coming into the season, we thought Mostert was the guy, and before we thought Mostert was the guy, we thought McKinnon was the guy, and when we just always seem to have a different guy every year, and they just seem to put a guy in, and he just becomes the guy, and then he changes the next year from the guy. So I try to buy the cheapest guy when that is the case. So I'm always looking to buy the cheapest guy when we have something like that situation present itself. Jamar Jefferson from Detroit is another dart throw rookie that I have here on this roster. And then finally, two pieces that I have lots and lots of places you'll see as reoccurring themes. These are guys that I drafted in the late rounds of rookies, and one has actually played pretty well. The other one hasn't gotten as much opportunity to play, but Khalil Herbert is, in my mind right now, the number one handcuff behind Monty, and I just feel like he had a lot of burst when he played, and so I like that burst, and I liked him coming out of school, and so I have him a lot of places just as a dart throw. If he would become a new regime there, you never know if he might become the guy. And so people are always asking for him currently, but right now the price that you can get for him, the cost, it doesn't feel like it is a very valuable situation. I mean, if somebody would throw up a first on me or something, I would take it, but nobody's going to do that currently. I guess I feel like when he's free, I'm just going to wait and see what he is. And the worst case scenario is he's nothing, but I didn't pay anything. The best case scenario is they trade Monty on the last year of his rookie deal, and Herbert's the guy with a new coaching staff. So I feel like the upside not far outweighs just being patient. And so I have lots of Herbert, like Herbert. He's one of the guys that I draft a lot. And then the other is Jarrett Patterson from the Commanders. And, his collegiate career, he had like a crazy amount of yards in a game, might have been 700 or something stupid in one game, and just thought for Buffalo State, and thought, geez, any guy that can run for 700 yards in the same game is just, I need him on the team, whatever. That doesn't matter who the competition is against. I'm not sure if I could make it 700 yards running, and so I'm just like, this guy's okay. And then when he got some brief cups of coffee, he looked okay. I mean, I wouldn't say he looked great, but he looked okay. And so he didn't look like he was terrible. So have a lot of him and just kind of hold him in the same kind of, if something were to happen, to the world of Gibson, I feel like I know analysts will have different ideas, but I feel like he's going to be something if that were to happen. And so again, a free square. I'm just going to hold the free square until it doesn't make sense anymore. So as I look at this running back room, there are some guys here that I would probably let go of before others, but Herbert and Patterson are I kind of hold on for dear life with just to kind of see some more, see what they are, and get an idea of how their usage is going to go. And probably won't feel like I have that until the end of the summer. And as I look back at last year, we had Gus Edwards, we had J.K. Dobbins, we had Cam Akers. We just had all these injuries to running backs, and in the preseason and just season-ending injuries. So, having some of these backups seemed to make a lot of sense in that regard. So excited for those pickups, and really would love to be able to use some of those in the flex if I could. Moving on to receivers, and this is where the team is really weak, but we'll address that as what I'm planning to do in the draft. And actually, this team is poised. So the last 2 years of this team, it did not make the playoffs, and we're looking to get it to the playoffs now. They traded away key pieces to get to the building blocks that are now here in front of us, and this is the first year with Pitts, for instance. So it was just the first year with some of the star-studded players that are here now, and so ready to really go after it with some young guys and make a move. Last year Andrews was hurt, for part of the year, and just was a down year for him, and he wasn't performing in 2020 the way he had in the past. And so, really excited for what happens in 2022 and beyond with this team. If I look at Fantasy Pros, they have this team ranked ninth, and actually I just jumped ahead and want to hit the receivers real quick, and I only have four. And so we'll pick up some receivers. Not going to just take receivers to take receivers, but think that this draft is really full of receivers. So just kind of trying to trim it all down. I need to start three, but I really only have two starters in my mind, and that's Darnell Mooney and Hunter Renfrow. Have Wesley from Arizona and have Mims from the Jets, and neither of which I feel real good about being starters. Both are darts, and Wesley probably would go before Mims, but just not sure what they are, and so just kind of excited for what is to lie ahead. Moving back to Fantasy Pros and their ranking, they have it ranked number 9 overall as a dynasty team, and so but what they don't understand is that it's a 3 quarterback league, and they don't understand the 2 tight end formula. As I look back at what they are, they did not predict the winner at all this year. Last year, their projected winner did not make the playoffs, so it just kind of shows that they don't really have those analytics. So I try to take whatever I like about them, and it's kind of funny, but they did rank me as the most accurate fantasy player with just setting my lineups. And I would say that it's less about my accuracy, but because I had no other options on the team. So I, of course, put the best points in as a rule. So, I really sold the depth. And as we talk about the players I traded away, you'll start to see that I traded away a lot of depth to get some draft picks for the moment that's about to come in May with this team. And so the players traded away were Zeke, Hoyer, the backup quarterback for the Browns. That was one of my fun sells. I sold James White. I sold Henry Ruggs, and so he sold Ruggs before anything happened to him, and so got out of the Ruggs business just in time. Sold James Robinson prior to ETN getting drafted, so got some first round picks for James Robinson. When I say some, I think it was 3, so crazy amount. And then I sold Michael Pittman. Love Pittman. I love Pittman. Have Pittman in a lot of places, but sometimes when the trades are there, you take the trades. And so just always moving the portfolio around. Players that I got back, or because some of those players I got back were actually draft picks that became players. So got back Pitts, got back Mims, got back Harrison Bryant, Sermon, Mond, and Mixon. I still this year have 4 first-round rookie picks, 3 second-round rookie picks, and so where that really comes out in the numbers of where I pick, which is an important piece really to the whole thing, is pick number 2 overall, pick number 4 overall, pick number 8 overall, number 9 overall, and number 12 in the first round overall. So 5 first round rookie picks, including 2 and 4. And so those are picks that can control the whole gamut of things. And then 14, 16, 20, 21, 28, 40, and 52. And so if you just kind of look at the top in the first and second round, there's 9 picks right there. So, there's a lot of room to maneuver, if you will, in those picks, and really control, from 9 picks from in the first 21 is a lot of room to control the draft. And, when I'm looking for quarterbacks, what I can honestly say is one of the two things are going to happen. People are going to trade up to the 2 spot to get a quarterback because they're like, oh, geez, he's going to take a quarterback, and then I'm going to get to spin off more draft capital for future years where I can really get the quarterbacks, or I'm going to take the quarterback, or and then once we get down to the 8, 9 spots and 12 spots, if all the quarterbacks are gone, if the 3 quarterbacks are drafted, that means that we're down to only 5 players that could have been taken. So let's say the 3 running backs and 2 receivers, I get the third best receiver at the eight spot, and by the way, I already got 2 of those other players just because I was sitting with picks. And so, I feel like I might, I should fall into some receivers there just because of where I draft, and I should be able to fall into some running backs just because of where I draft, and so I'm going to really be able to push. Force people to trade with me just based on what the picks are. And what that does is, you trade back from 2 to 4, 2 to 5, let's say, and you pick up next year's first. Well, now I have, only move back 3. I still have the same kind of situation, but now what I'm doing is kicking the can down the lane a little bit. And what that does for me is it allows me to not feel so forced to win this year. But having said that, we're 2 years in to a 10-year program, and I really always try to win 4 times out of 10. So don't want to get into a position where I lost the first 6 years and now we got to win 4 in a row. So would like to be able to be in a position to get this team to the playoffs this year. But if not this year, it's not like a thing where it's a panic attack, because if it doesn't get there this year, it's just one step closer, and it's incremental building. And so I am pleased with where things are. But with all those picks, I would be kind of dismayed if some of those receivers that are deep in this draft can't play a role in the spots that I have there. And with, let's say, 3 of them become starters, well, all of a sudden now I can deal with an injury to Renfro, or I can deal with some injuries there to the receiving core, but I also or Mooney, but I also could plug them into the flex. Also have some abilities to navigate things, and if I pick running backs, then I have an ability to trade some running backs, and if I go with quarterbacks, then I have the ability again to throw quarterbacks in there where I feel like I'm really light, and so it gives a lot of flexibility in this environment. And so if we think about the monopoly, especially in the tight end room that's here, it's already in place, and it's in place for a lot of years. Like I do expect that Andrews will be still a thing in 2 more years. Like in 2025, I think Andrews will be a thing. Like he might be getting closer to the end of the thing, but he's going to be still under 30. So we're still talking about 30-year-old player. And there's still some gas in the gas tank, if you will, there. And, Pitts will be a 24-year-old player, and Hawkinson will be in his 20s. And so there's a lot of room there for those guys to really take off, and a lot of time for me to just keep adding to it. So I hope you enjoyed this presentation of just kind of this breakdown of team, and excited to see where this kind of a team goes. This league does have 3 divisions, so 3 division winners do win overall, and then 3 wild card teams. Not that really has me manage any different. It's just a different setup, if you will, and it does pay for first through third. So there is some fallback. If you do get to the playoffs, you do get a chance to win some money. So it does allow for some sort of recovery, but it's something that I'm looking to get back to the playoffs and win, this year. So let me know what you think of this team. Tell me that the squad is terrible. Tell me that it's going to win it all. Make sure you hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and let me know all the feedback you have. Tell me if I'm crazy. Thanks.